189 seconds. 3 minutes and 9 seconds. Jamie Raskin held a DHS phone system log above his head and asked the question that would produce the longest silence in congressional hearing history. Mr. Miller, between February 11th and April 27th of this year, you received 47 phone calls to your secure government line between the hours of 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Eastern Time. The calls came from 11 different numbers. Some of those numbers traced to foreign countries, some traced to unlisted private lines, and some traced to individuals currently under federal investigation. So I have a very simple question. Who called you at 2 a.m.? Miller's face went completely blank. Not shocked. Not afraid. Blank. Like someone had just asked him something he had spent months preparing not to answer, and all that preparation had just become useless. His lead attorney's pen stopped moving mid-word. And Raskin, constitutional law professor, impeachment manager, the man who does not ask questions he does not already know the answer to, had not even mentioned the most incriminating call yet. To understand why that question produced 189 seconds of silence, you have to understand what Raskin was holding. A single folder. Thick. Maybe 200 pages. He had not opened it during the opening statements. Just sat there with his hand resting on top of it, patient, calm, the look of someone holding a royal flush and waiting for the other players to bet. Raskin had phone logs, real ones, official DHS secure line records, and he was going to enter them into the congressional record whether Miller cooperated or not. Miller arrived looking tired, darker circles than usual. His legal team looked tired too. The first 35 minutes were procedural. Miller gave competent answers. He looked almost comfortable. Then Raskin took the microphone and the temperature in the room dropped. Mr. Miller. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. The DHS Office of Inspector General conducted a routine audit of secure phone line usage last quarter. Standard procedure. They do it every year. Nothing unusual. He opened the folder. But this year, something caught their attention. A pattern of calls to your direct secure line, calls made at very unusual times. He pulled out the first page. This is the call log for your DHS secure line from February 1st through April 30th. 3 months. During those 3 months, you received 312 total calls, most of them during normal business hours. Exactly what you would expect. He paused. But 47 of those calls came between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. Eastern Time. He looked up. Mr. Miller, why is someone calling your government secure line at 2 in the morning? Miller leaned forward slightly. Congressman, as Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, I work on matters that involve multiple time zones. International coordination sometimes requires. I understand time zones. Raskin's voice stayed level. But let me show you something interesting about these calls. He pulled out a second page. Of the 47 calls made between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., only 14 came from phone numbers with international country codes. The other 33 calls, he paused, came from domestic numbers. United States area codes. People calling your secure government line at 2 in the morning from inside the United States. He set the paper down. The time zone explanation does not work for 33 of these calls. Who in the United States was calling you at 2 a.m.? A murmur went through the room. Raskin continued without pausing. Now I know what you are thinking. Maybe these were emergency calls. Crisis situations. Border incidents that required immediate response. He pulled out another document. So I cross-referenced the call times with DHS incident reports. Major events that would justify emergency contact. He opened it and began reading. On February 23rd, you received a call at 2:17 a.m. No border incidents that night. No emergencies. Nothing. On March 8th, a call at 1:43 a.m. Nothing. March 15th, 2:34 a.m. Nothing. April 4th, 2:09 a.m. Nothing. April 19th, 1:56 a.m. Nothing. He closed the document. 33 calls at 2 in the morning. 0 emergencies to justify them. So I will ask you again, Mr. Miller. Who was calling you at 2 a.m.? Miller did not answer. His attorney whispered something. Miller shook his head. Raskin pulled out a third document. Mr. Miller, I subpoenaed the phone company records for these numbers. Most of them are unlisted private lines with no public directory information, but phone companies keep records. and federal subpoenas are very effective. He held up the page. Of the 33 domestic numbers that called you at 2 a.m., I was able to trace 27 of them. He paused. 7 of those numbers are registered to lobbying firms in Washington. DC-4 are registered to law firms that represent foreign governments. 3 are registered to private equity funds that hold DHS contracts. He set it down. And 1 number, he looked directly at Miller, is registered to an individual who was fired from DHS in January for unauthorized disclosure of classified information. The room erupted, not with shouting, with a sharp intake of breath from 50 people simultaneously realizing they had just heard something that should not exist. Raskin waited for silence. On March 23rd at 2:41 a.m., you received a 19-minute phone call from an individual who had been terminated from government service 2 months earlier for leaking classified information. He leaned forward. Mr. Miller. What were you discussing at 2:41 in the morning with someone who was fired for leaking secrets? Miller's hands were flat on the table now, pressed down hard. Raskin was not done. But that is not the most interesting call. He pulled out another page. On April 12th at 1:52 a.m., you received a call from a number registered to a lobbying firm called Strategic Alliance Group. They represent 3 foreign governments. 2 of them are listed by the State Department as countries of concern for intelligence activities. The call lasted 27 minutes. He looked up. What were you discussing with foreign government lobbyists at 2 in the morning, Mr. Miller? Miller's jaw tightened. Visibly, the cameras caught it. Raskin pulled out a 5th document. And here is where it gets interesting. I cross-referenced the dates of these 2 a.m. calls with official actions taken by your office the following day. He opened it. On February 23rd, you received a 2 a.m. call. The next day, February 24th, you signed a classified intelligence sharing authorization. On March 8th, you received a 2 a.m. call. The next day, March 9th, you authorized a $1.1 billion emergency procurement contract. On April 12th, you received that 27-minute call from the foreign government lobbying firm. The next day, April 13th, you issued a directive changing border statistics reporting methodology. He closed the document. Every single one of these 2 a.m. calls was followed within 24 hours by a major policy action, a financial authorization, or a classified intelligence decision. That is not a coincidence, Mr. Miller. That is coordination. Then Raskin pulled out one more document. While you sit there silent, he said, let me tell you what else I found. I subpoenaed your personal cell phone records. Not your government line, your personal phone. He held up the page. On the same night you received those 2 a.m. calls on your secure government line, your personal cell phone was also active. Text messages sent within minutes of the 2 a.m. calls ending. And those text messages were sent to some of the same numbers that called your government line. You were using your personal phone to continue conversations that started on your secure government line. That is called circumventing oversight. That is a federal violation. So I am going to ask you one final time, Raskin said, and I am going to time how long you refuse to answer. Who called you at 2 a.m.? What did they want? And why did you do what they asked the next day? He pulled out his phone, opened the stopwatch, held it up. The room went completely silent. Miller stared at the table. Raskin pressed start. 10 seconds. Miller's attorney writing frantically. 20 seconds. 30. Raskin stood up, still holding the stopwatch. Mr. Miller, I managed an impeachment trial. I have never seen someone protect 11 different phone numbers making 47 calls at 2 in the morning. 40 seconds. Who are you protecting? 50 seconds. Miller's face had gone gray. 60 seconds. 1 full minute. 70 seconds. Miller's hands started to shake. He pressed them harder against the table. 80 seconds. Raskin walked closer. Mr. Miller, one of those numbers traces to a country we do not have an intelligence sharing agreement with. You took a call from them at 2 a.m. the next day. You signed an intelligence authorization. That is a crime. 90 seconds. 100. Miller's attorney tried to stand. Your client will answer or he will be held in contempt. 120. 2 full minutes. 150. 2.5 minutes. Raskin stopped walking. Mr. Miller, I am going to count to 189. And then every page of these phone logs goes into the congressional record. Every number. Every timestamp. Every cross-reference with your official actions. 170. His attorney tried one final time. Mr. Chairman, we invoke executive privilege. You cannot invoke executive privilege on phone calls from foreign government lobbyists. At 2 a.m. Raskin did not even look at her. 189. He stopped the timer. 3 minutes and 9 seconds. He turned to the committee. Mr. Chairman, the witness has refused to answer. I move to enter all phone logs into the congressional record. I further move to refer this matter to the FBI for counterintelligence investigation into potential foreign influence operations. Both motions passed. Raskin gathered his documents. He looked at Miller quietly. 189 seconds. That is how long you protected whoever was calling you at 2 in the morning. Those calls happened. The records exist. The pattern is clear. And your silence just told this committee everything we need to know. What Raskin built in that room was different from every other confrontation in this series. Not a wire transfer. Not a classified file. A phone log. The most mundane possible form of evidence. Timestamps and numbers. Assembled into something no procedural defense could dissolve. Because phone logs do not lie. They record what happened. And when you lay those timestamps next to the official actions taken the following day, the pattern that emerges is legible to anyone who can read a calendar. The 33 domestic calls at 2 a.m. with no emergencies to explain them. The 19-minute call from someone fired for leaking secrets. The 27-minute call from a firm lobbying for countries the State Department considers intelligence concerns. The personal phone texting the same numbers within minutes of each government line call. Each element a serious question. Together, they describe what Raskin named without euphemism. Coordination. Miller's silence lasted 189 seconds. He did not dispute a single number in the phone log. He did not explain the call from the fired leaker or the 27-minute conversation with the foreign government lobbying firm. He sat and said nothing, and that silence is now part of the permanent congressional record alongside the question that started it. Who called you at 2 a.m.? A question that 3 minutes and 9 seconds later is still waiting for an answer.